the reason I presented one idea is that I was responding to the challenge, is it possible to imagine a political system where people actually control their own lives? There may be more than one way to do it. What I wanted to do is I wanted to try to think out for myself, well, can this be done? Here's how I think it could work. So it doesn't exclude other ways it might work, but for me, the fact that I could find one way that seemed workable seemed like, well, that's something. So now when people say to me, well, what's the alternative? Well, here's one way you could do it. I think people's capacity, inclination, and yes, time for participation will be much, much greater under different social circumstances than they are today. Okay. But I wanted to guard against the sort of extrapolating that to concluding that therefore people are happy to go to 50 meetings a day. Okay? So that is, I think participation is important for us, but I also think that one of the reasons we're participating is so that we can design lives that we enjoy, and as much fun as meetings are, there's more to life than just meetings. I'm going to jump to your fourth question about secession. I think secession is a very important question. I think that's one of the checks that minorities have against the power of the majority. If they are a geographic minority, which they're often not, and therefore that may not apply, but if they are a geographic minority, secession is one option they have that says, okay, we're out of here. We don't want to be part of your larger decision-making authority. Now, secession is not easy because there's then the question of how do you divide resources? This particular geographic minority happens to be sitting on oil and or something more useful, agricultural land and water, and the rest of the society doesn't have as much of that resource. So it's like divorce. I think it's criminal not to allow people to divorce, but I think that divorce needs to figure out what you do about the kids and how you divide the property. So you need some kind of rules, and so the same thing might need to apply there. Okay, and finally the question of am I in some ways reifying politics, making it a separate sphere of life, and therefore making it rather artificial? I guess so, but I didn't really know how to avoid doing that. That is, on the one hand, I didn't want to talk about, well, here's what I think the economic system of a good society would look like, because I think I've already found a model that others have developed that I thought was pretty good. I guess it's one of the limitations of my own mind that I need to divide things up in certain manageable ways. And what I would hope is that these lower level councils, one of the things they would be deciding on is the economic consumption request of that geographic unit. And so, of course, one of the most important, what does a neighborhood need to talk about? The economic decisions are probably more important than most everything else they're going to talk about. So there's obviously a very close connection between the economics and the politics here. And likewise, a lot of the political decisions are going to deal with questions of gender and questions of race and culture and so on. And so all these different spheres of life are interconnected. And yes, in some ways I could sort of imperialistically say politics is really the whole thing and everything is really a political decision. But on the other hand, I would say this. If you say, look, all you need to do is talk about the politics, because underneath politics, one of your political decisions is, what kind of economic system do we want? But here's the danger. a democratic political system can only work if you have certain kinds of material equality between people, which requires some kind of economic system. So what happens if everybody votes for, we want a neoliberal economic system with vast inequalities in wealth? Well, if people democratically reach that, you know, I guess they could have it. I can't stop them from having it, but I think in that case, democracy will be doomed, because you can't have democracy when you've got vast inequalities of resources.